Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Carissa. Hey, Stocky, what's your name?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I'm under Shannon's computer. So
Oh, that's okay.
How you been, brother? Good to hear you.
good.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start us because we have a lot of stuff to cover.
Almost had a team to do the duel.
Oh, yeah. That would have been fun to have you there. Mark?
I'm here. Anyway, technology. It's amazing when it works.
Susie, is that Susie Curtis?
Yeah,
Say
I'm
what?
here.
Okay.
Okay. Julie's just trying to make sure she gets everybody for the minutes.
Thank you.
Margie, I thought you weren't going to make it.
Yeah, I'm home. It was delayed flights, but whatever.
Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started. I will call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have a lot of stuff to cover. Hopefully it won't take too long, but I look forward to some good discussions. The first thing to do is approve the minutes from the October meeting and of the November 7th meeting where we went over the bylaws. So does anybody want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Oh, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Mark seconds. All right, everybody in favor of voting to approve both the October 10th and November 10th minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Okay, both of those minutes pass. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for that great discussion of the bylaws last week. That was a really good, we talked for over 2 hours, but it was really worthwhile. Okay, recap of events. The first one, Daniel, is Duel, and you sent a great summary to people of what was good, what was bad, what was going to change and stuff. So you want to recap?
On that report, I will just stand on that report.
Okay, cool.
Keep it short. Awesome.
It was really fun. We had a great time.
I have two questions for the future. I still have a question. These are both listed on the report as questions. I'm still not sure if I like the quad relay. I do feel like it took away from the duel, which I hate. But I feel that there are many people who would have run the duel had they not been in the quad. But I also feel that there are people that would not have participated at all had they not had the quad. I'm 49-49 on this. The other 2% says we're doing it anyway. We might as well do it. I mean, it doesn't take any less, and logistically, it's actually a really decent event because 3 runners. You only have 1 runner on the track at a time.
Yeah.
So
I loved it. It was fun. Yeah, I loved it.
Anyways, I'm just figuring we're already there. Why not? It doesn't really hurt anything. There's no extra awards. It's really nothing. It's easy to time. It's usually easier to count legs, but I guess some teams struggle with that. But we had about 4 teams that did not end up enough legs, and 1 team stayed on the track for like their 14th rotation, not knowing they were supposed to stop. My other question is, since we're going to do this in the summer, what to do with that early hour? I don't think the walk worked. I don't think the mile is going to work. Although if I bring it back, I want to bring it back right. There was a suggestion to bring back segments of the old ORRC mile where I did the Devil's 2-mile run. My worry about that is people are going to want to run that hard, and I don't want them to not show up to run the duel. So I think there's plenty of time to make that decision, what to do with that hour or anything. Do we just start the event at 7 and allow people time to get there in the evening on Tuesday night, warm up and not be pressured? And do we just go into the main events, or maybe even back it up 15 minutes or so that, that'll be a nice decision for myself and a co-director to make when we get closer to that time. Also, the race did lose about $380. I attribute that to not selling t-shirts. I was wrong in assuming that because the t-shirt was cool, we would sell them. They're just people that say, look, I don't care how cool it is. I got enough t-shirts. I don't have room for another one, not even a cool one. So lesson learned, we will go with a different item that doesn't cost as much next time and not take a bath on it.
Hey, Danielle, I saw you made $468.
Yeah, I did. So, but I mean, unless there was some late money that came in that I didn't
There
know
was
about.
another deposit that came in like from Run Sign Up. That made the difference. So
Does that mean I have to raise the grade from a B+ to an A- now?
Yes.
Everything else about the race is in the report, and I'll stand on the details are there. And yes, for Dave Cook and his wife, we will have a new playlist. I got a great idea for it, and we will not play lullabies next time, I promise.
So Daniel, just one thing to consider, in your debate about whether or not to do the mile run or whatever, is think about your core competency with this race. It's a relay. It's a unique type of relay. And are you trying to maybe branch out in a way that may not be the best way? So.
Well, what I did for many years, I took 2 events and held them on the same day because they both took a track, and I just figured it was good. They just have one event and then the other. Another idea with the mile is to either have some a few heats of the mile relay, the 4x400, or this is just really bold and Dan's just freaking bat crap crazy here.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a heat of a 4x mile relay? 4x 1600, a 6-mile relay. Will we get a couple of?
No, that's a 4 mile, Daniel.
Well, it's called the 4x4. And
Yeah, but you said it was 6 miles. That's only 4.
no, it's 4x 1600. It's a 1600 times 4. So yeah, okay. So it's 6 mile, 6 relay, 6K. Okay. So anyways, that's another thought. I think it'd be cool, but I don't know if anybody will do it. Just because it's cool doesn't mean I'm learning. Just because it's cool doesn't mean people are going to want to do it. So anyways, if we made money, then I'm going to grade it an A. If we didn't, it's still a B. Everybody, thank you for your help. Big thanks to Hal, and big thanks to my nephew. Came through for me, and I really have no desire to move this race. I know we've been thinking about new venues for it, and maybe we could do it back on Dunaway where we started it.
I love Catlin Gable. I think
The
that's
permit is 2 phone calls, gang. The
Yeah.
cost is next to nothing.
yeah. Keep
They
it
gave
there.
me a key to the freaking press box,
Yeah.
and it's too easy. I mean, they're too easy to work.
No need to move it. We're
Yeah,
good,
keep it there.
Daniel.
Right.
And to be fair, in the summer heat, it gets shadier quicker than any other place in town. So, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, upcoming events. Big one coming up, Turkey Trot.
Turkey Trot. Just I missed checking in here. Are Hal and Dave here or not?
No, they are not.
Okay, so I can speak to everybody. Anyway, so bunch of stuff. I'm trying not to get too far in the weeds. Stay focused on the meeting and not so much on all the little logistic stuff. Turkey stuffing coming at Bonnie's house, coming up on Sunday at noon. A whole bunch of you here at this meeting are going to be there. There's 3,000 turkeys to put in little bags, with 8 or 10 people. It should not take very long, and we'll have food and drink too. It'll be fun. We'll share stories and all that. At this point, and other things are in place. Early packet pickup at Foot Traffic starts on Friday, runs through Tuesday, each day at a different location. And I've got volunteers for each of those assignments. And Hal is good. Hal and I are gonna basically on Friday put together a kit. The last big pieces are the t-shirts, which will be ready on Friday. But put together a kit, so to speak, that we'll present to the first group. The idea being, if at all possible, they just simply, when their shift is done at one Foot Locker location, they bring it to the next Foot Locker location for the next day. That way there's least amount of moving stuff around. And after the Tuesday, it goes back. I'm sorry?
It's foot traffic, isn't it? Not Foot Locker?
Yeah, traffic,
Foot traffic. Sorry, you're right. Foot traffic. I got the wrong thing in my head. I probably, I'm still on jet lag. Foot traffic. God, thank you.
Mark,
And so anyhow,
Mark?
but then it all goes back to Hal on Tuesday and then to the zoo on Wednesday. So all
Mark?
that's, yes.
regarding the early pickup, the run sign up is not jiving with the letter that you want to send out, that the shifts for volunteers and what's posted. So if you could let me know what it is, so we can correct the
Well,
runs.
What's in the letter is correct.
Okay.
That's, yeah, it's, I've got so much stuff out there. I apologize for not keeping it all in place, but what is in the letter that went out is the correct information.
Okay.
So if the run sign up says different, please do change it. So it's the same.
Mark, are you in need of a pickup?
No, I mean, I got my magic car. It's a clown car. A clown drives it, and you can be amazed how much stuff I can fit in there. So, I'm good.
I can't drive, but I can't be there. But you can, if anyone wants to borrow my pickup, they can.
I'll keep that in mind. This one, I don't think so, but I will keep that in mind.
Hey, Mark, is
Yep.
Steve Cook gonna take care of whatever sound system we need, or do you need my
I
help?
don't know. That's still been kicking around. We haven't really made a decision on that. Because how can I say? I think it's better to get the right system than to buy something quick.
Mhm.
And it's got to be powerful. It's got to be portable. It needs a cordless mic is the best thing. There's certain features that we need to have.
Yeah, and I noticed the one Dave originally picked out wasn't waterproof, and I think that might be a nice feature.
That's another feature. I think we need to slow down rather than to hurry. I mean, do any of the current sound systems work? Has somebody tried them? None of them work at all.
Big box thing doesn't work. The big black box does not.
Hang on, the big black box works as long as it's plugged in.
It has to be plugged in.
Yes. It has no
We
battery.
were told it does not work.
I had it. I was dictating the Gettysburg Address to my neighbors when it was plugged in earlier.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. It will not charge. You can't charge it and even expect for a second that part
It does not charge. It needs to be plugged into electricity to work. Okay. I guess I would rather make do with what we have than rush buying something we don't really want. That's my opinion.
My test on that was about 5 minutes or less. So you might be wise to just rent one for this event.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that to you, Daniel.
Okay, well, tell you what, I'll try it. I'll take it home with me. I'm going to be by the ORRC garage, and we'll figure it out. I mean, like I said, I would rather either make do with what we have. If it is workable, it doesn't charge, but if it's plugged in, it'll work. And I'd rather rent something than buy something quick and realize it's not what we really want. So, but I'll get with my team, Dave and Hal, and we'll figure it out. Okay. What else? I sent out a draft of the instructions to participants, and a couple of you looked at it and give me some good feedback. I intend to send that out tomorrow, by a run sign up, and then I will, resend it several times before race day, but I'll be sending it out for the first time tomorrow. So if you have any feedback on the instructions, if anything's not clear, typos, whatever, reply to my email and I'll make those adjustments before I send it tomorrow. I guess the big thing at this point is that, is have tried to delegate responsibility to different people, and I just want to be sure that everybody's prepared. Dave and Hal are going to handle setting up the course outside of the zoo, the aid station, the turnaround, all of that, and they've been out to the zoo to scope that out, so they feel ready for that part of it. I will be in the Cascade Grill up, and that's, I'm there to be the home base, and I feel ready for that. Bonnie has been doing lots and lots of work with the food, getting free donuts and bagels and the whole bit from Franz, and I think she's got a handle on that. I have a volunteer willing to help to set things up inside the zoo. I need to give him some instructions, but before I do, I want to check with Val and Margie. I've got you down for at the finish line, Margie at the finish line, and then Val to be doing the top trot. And I sent earlier today maps and instructions, but I think both of those positions are best if we, that is you, me, and the two of you can visit the zoo before Thanksgiving, just to physically stand in the space and go, this goes there and that goes there, because the map is always, I don't know, it varies just a little bit each year if there's construction or something. So, looking to this weekend, Val and Margie, Saturday or it would either be, I would say, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, or Sunday morning, where the three of us would meet at the zoo and walk in and walk around and just get the lay of the land. Any of those times better or worse for the two of you?
Well, since we're doing turkeys on Sunday, maybe we could go right before or after.
I agree.
Well, let's do it before, because I mean, as far as that, the zoo lights are coming up, and with the zoo lights, their hours get funny. The zoo, it's seeing the animals closes sooner, so they can have the light anyhow. So let's tentatively say meeting at the zoo Sunday morning, and I'll get back to you on time and all that kind of stuff. But so we can walk through the zoo together and just so you have a good visual understanding of how it's all going to work. I mean, I've sent you the general instructions and map, and I'll get back to you on that.
Perfect.
So Sunday AM, and then we'll do the turkeys. Okay. Just checking my list here. I don't know. I guess I've had more time to prepare for turkey trot than I did for the best damn run, and more time than Hal had for garlic, but I still feel like I'm playing catch up. And this is just my feelings right now. And that Dave Cook, we could not have done this without Dave Cook and his experience and his knowledge. So credit to him. But without, it has not been a smooth transition from the previous race director. And that's been a bit frustrating. And so one thing I would definitely want to do once we get through this is as a team, me, Hal, and Dave, and any other interested parties, to walk through all the decisions we made, financial and otherwise, like who gets assured, how much it costs, all that kind of stuff, and logistics, to make some decisions about, did we make enough money? Do we want to change something? So we make more? A lot of decisions that were like, well, we've always done it this way, and not fully understanding the water why always doing that way. And it's been a bit frustrating. So one thing I definitely want to do once we get through it all is to sit down and talk through it, the financials and all the different choices that we made, so that going forward, we can be sure that it is a good money maker for the club, and to make sure that it's a good experience for the participants. And not do things just because we've always done them that way, but do them because that's the way we want to do them. And that's the thing to be done after we get through it. So, unless anybody's got any questions, or I'm ready to move on.
Quick question about turkey stuffing on Sunday. Are we also stuffing cookies? Because it mentions cookies at the kids' run.
Oh, we're just going to buy bags, and
Okay,
because some years you buy in bulk and put them in bags. We're just going to buy them prepackaged.
Okay.
Yeah,
Save-
I already got those, Mark.
Okay,
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Little frosted
Nice.
animal cookies, little individual packets.
Perfect.
Yep. Awesome.
And just so
Cool.
everybody's aware, the turkey trot, we are at over 1,800 now.
We're over 1900.
Over 1,900. We're ahead of last year by a couple hundred, so we are doing good.
And I ordered extra shirts, so that's always a guess, but we'll see how it goes. So
All
I
right.
have a question.
Yeah, you joined.
When are we going to do the bibs and pies stickers?
done. They're on the stickers. They're on the bibs already.
Okay,
It's done.
okay. Done.
All right, moving on to Ralph's run. All right, moving on to
Okay.
Ralph's run.
I'll just keep talking. For y'all know, if y'all know the story from last year about Mark's big mistake about timeliness of requesting permits, and boy, is he, he broke it and he fixed it. Well, as of this morning, I have 2 out of 3 permits done, and it's November, so I learned from my mistake. So permits are in place for Ralph's run, and the other.
Mark, can
Yeah.
you fill me in on some of the details? When is Ralph's run? What is the run? How long, etc.?
Okay, sure.
I have not become familiar.
Well, it's the Y2K run, and its origins are the 8.6 and 86. It became the Y2K run. The distances have anyhow. The current version of this thing, which has been called many different names and all of that, is Ralph's Run in honor of Ralph Brown, who started it back in 1986. And this year it has a 5K, a 10K, a 20.24 kilometer run, and that'll be change every year. And then also we're adding a kids run. There's a Forest Grove School District put in a nice shiny new track there at Tom McCall, and we're going to be one of the first people to use it for our event for that. Other just pancake feed as always. We'll have the UCC do that. Pancake feed as always. We'll have the UCC do that.
And Mark, one more question. Is
Sure.
it in fact on January 1st?
It is
No.
not. No, we
It is
way back
not.
when we were discussing the calendar, we talked about possibly moving the date and all that stuff. And the end of the discussion was, well, no, let's keep it that first Saturday in January. And
First Saturday, thank you.
yeah, so it is. And so no finisher medals, but instead everybody gets a hat. They call it a beanie, a stocking cap with the Ralph's Run logo on it, and that'll be every finisher gets a gimme, and it's not a medal, it's going to be a hat. And Bonnie and I have talked about this, and it's kind of we're thinking like we're going to do like a trio. Like this year it'll be a hat. Like this year it'll be mittens, and then the following year scarves, something like that. So we're keeping with a theme, and every year. So, but Ralph's Run is ahead of schedule compared to last year.
Awesome. Just for all of you race directors who are sitting in on this, I sent out an email, but I did renew our RRCA membership, so we are ready to request certificates of additional insurance. We already have the general $2 million insurance liability. If you need a specific certificate for your event, just let me know the name and address of the person to add to it, and I can get that requested for you. Okay, moving on to awards banquet.
Tracy, you want us to have you request them, or do you want us to request them ourselves?
I think I have to request them, so if you get me the information, I can log into RRCA and request it for you.
Very well.
No. Well, I did it. I've requested the insurance for Ralph's run. So
Oh, you did already. Okay.
yeah,
You can do it. That's great.
Individual race directors can request their own insurance certificates.
Yeah, your races are all listed. I when I renewed our membership, I listed all the different events that we have, so they should be they should know about you.
I mean, I know we can do it. My question is, as a matter of policy, do you want to have those go through you?
I do not care if you want to. If the race directors want to do it themselves, that's absolutely.
Thank you.
Historically, RDs have done their own. You know, in part because the permits get very specific, like, you know, addresses and contacts, and it's a lot of detailed information, and that's typically RDs have that. And, you know, let me just say, historically, RDs have done their own, but, you know, you can always ask for help if you need it.
I just did it for Hagg, so.
Yeah.
Okay, awards banquet. Awards is still all set to go. We have 51 people registered already. So we are good to go there, and got the applications in and the catering done. So it's on track.
And again, Tracy, the date for the awards banquet, please.
It is Saturday, January 27th. If you have your magnet, if you've received it in the mail, they went out last week.
I got it in mail.
You got that in the mail?
Yay.
Yay! They were in the mail Friday last week.
We
so.
already had one comment from a person who says magnets are not eco-friendly and because they'll go into landfills. So if we want to think about that for next year, we can. I like them, but
Good Lord.
I know. We also have extra magnets. We mailed them to all the members, and we have extras we're going to bring into Turkey Trot.
Yep.
Okay, Hagg Mud. I don't think anybody from Hagg Mud is here, but they're on track. They're doing well, so everything's on track for that. Champoeg. Yes, Valerie.
Well, we're on our way. We almost had a little glitch because somebody accidentally reserved the pavilion instead of the Oak Grove covered area, but the park ranger there was like, she went out of her way to help out. So we got lucky there. Phew. And then I just ordered, we're all gonna have knit beanies with the new Champoeg logo. So those just got ordered, and I think we're on our way. We've got a good plan in place for what we, a good vision, Mark and I, Takazawa. So I think we're on our way, and he's working on the permit, and I don't know what else. We'll find out when we get there, I guess. But
And again, I don't have my magnet. What is the date of Champoeg?
it's March 2nd.
You.
And Valerie, that's Mark. So I'm going to
Oh,
take
hi,
some
Mark.
time off next week, and I'm going to go out and visit and do all that stuff next week. So
Yeah.
And thank you, Mark, for stepping in to help co-RD this. He was a past co-RD of this event, and we really appreciate you kind of coming back to the fold and helping us out with that event.
Yeah,
Well,
we've done it. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
yeah, I was saying with the new board and the old board out, Shannon gave me permission to participate again.
And we're really going to try to do it like go back to what we did before and keep it fairly simple and fun. So
Old school.
We're trying to we've got run sign up updated. We don't have our ORC website updated. We have to take out the part that they say there's catering. So assuming you guys are.
And what are the distances for Champoeg?
10, 20, and 30K.
Yep.
Kids
We
run.
decided to get rid of the half and just go back to what we've traditionally done. As I think it's been mentioned more than once, we like our quirky races like Duel and 10, 20, 30. So why not? And we've got Jeff Huber. The 20K was not certified, and he said he would do it for a discounted rate of $250 for us. So that was very nice too.
Cool.
That's awesome. All right, back to Mark and Vernonia.
I'm not really thinking about it. It's so far away. No, other than just repeat what everybody knows. They're adding a quad relay to the event, 4 people doing the whole marathon together. And what's the other thing? I usually get registration on that early because we get 50 staters, and so the sooner it's on the calendar, the better. And it's been on the calendar since September, so that's all good. And the only little thing I want to need is just looking over my list today is some banners for the exchanges, and then but I've reached out to Ken about if he does that or has a contact to get the big feather banners, flags, whatever you call them.
Cool.
And again, Mark, the date for Vernonia, please.
April 14th. It's a Sunday. And I got to get through next week. It's for I really think about it. But
Okay.
no,
Awesome.
it's on schedule where it should be for this time of year. So we're good.
Awesome. Thank you. And last up is 1200 Club. It's fine. People are registering for next year, and it's doing great. No problems. On track. All right. Okay, moving on to treasurer's report, and I forwarded a bunch of stuff that Valerie sent me early on. We have a couple of things to talk about our finances and banks and budgets and stuff like that. So I'll just let Valerie start. Are you muted, Valerie?
Yes, I was. I have Adnan on the bottom, and I hit on his, and it didn't do much. So anyway, I will start with cash, the good news. So we have $80,483 in checking. We have $162,803 in savings, and then in our investment account we have the market value of $114,458. I was able to finally get a statement, although I can't access the new statements because they switched their platform. But as of the end of October, I looked through the statement, and it's invested in iShares, and I mean, we'll have I'll go back to that, but it's not invested in just like treasuries, and which I don't really think meets our investment strategy.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. Anyway, on the profit and loss, I think we're just at a little bit of a loss right now, $1,969, but we've brought in quite a bit for Turkey Trot, and we're going to have to pay for the entrance fees to Turkey Trot. So I think we brought in $68,000 in Turkey Trot. So we're on track, but we have I think $75,000 in just overall club expenses, so we've got to cover that. So it'll be interesting to see if we break even this year, but there were some big expenses that I don't expect to see next year, like
well, the copywriting things we won't have to pay again, and the web design stuff that we paid for we won't have to pay again. That's like 10 right there. So.
Right, and so hopefully that'll be a lot better. And then I noticed your budget for the picnic was a little less than they probably spent too. But anyway, on the races, back to, I guess, Daniel there, I showed that Duel actually made just under $500, so that was kind of nice. And then best stand run, we came in at just under 800. We lost almost 3,600 on Garlic Festival, but I'm calling that a wash. An exception, let's say. And then Turkey Trot, we've got in just over 62,000 at this point. Last year, the total race fees collected was just over 93,000, so we're like 2/3 of the way there. I don't know if that's good.
We'll get a lot over the next week and a half.
Yeah, it's coming in every week when we get the run sign up. It's a good chunk, so we're doing okay. And then I think that's it there. I had something I wanted to say. Oh, I guess I should mention the lovely letter I got this week from the IRS saying, so if you don't file a Form 990, they charge you $20 a day for a smaller entity like ours, up to $10,000. So I got this nice little letter saying, we're fining you a penalty of $10,000 because of your 2018 Form 990 not being filed on time. And I looked up on the IRS site, and sure enough, it's not there. I looked in the stuff from the accountant, and there was an amended 2018 return. So, but I did figure out, I haven't heard back from Dave Cook yet, and I really want to send the letter out this week. But that is, Dave Green passed away in July of 2019, and he always did those on extension. So I'm just gonna there's a reasonable, I don't know what the correct legal term is, but it's like a reasonable circumstance. And the thing is, the IRS says yes or no. You're either going to pay $10,000 or zero. So we'll find out if, I think I was thinking of actually, even because I was taught to like always play on their sympathy. So I think I was going to print out a obituary I found for Dave.
Absolutely, send that with it. Absolutely,
whatever works. So
our treasurer passed away. We had an interim. We didn't know, and all that. Yeah.
And the IRS is notoriously slow at responding, so it could be months before we really find out. But just so you know, it's out there. And then the last thing is that we've had just a nightmare time with Wells Fargo, Tracy and I. I mean, I could not get Dave. I mean, I've spent hours just trying to get that credit card that Steve had canceled, and it's just been kind of an awful thing. And getting Tracy a credit card, which she still never got. So, we met with some, and the whole point, Dave Green was the one that chose Wells Fargo, and the reason he did that at the time was because there were Wells Fargos all over the place, and his theory was whoever's treasurer or president, there's Wells Fargo somewhere close. Well, Tracy and I are kind of fans of On Point, and they're now in every Fred Meyer in town. So we met with a gentleman named Brandon from On Point, and they're glad to have our account. The only bad thing is they have like overabundance of deposits, so you can get great loan rates, but their savings rates pretty pathetic. But the idea would be that we would have a savings account, the checking account, and then we'd use their investment arm and just invest in like, I really think, and this is a board decision, but I really think we should be looking at, and not the stuff that Karen chose, but more like treasury bills and CDs and something that, that we're being very fiscally conservative, I guess, about.
Not derivatives, is that what I'm hearing?
What was that?
Not derivatives, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I'm just saying really big. And right now, I mean, interest rates are probably going, but right now treasuries, you could get 5%. And I could see like putting some of it out 12 months or something, and something very safe like that. But I just don't, as much money as we have, the last thing I think we should do is gamble with it and lose it.
So Valerie, I have a couple of suggestions in the whole conversation. One is, first of all, I am an On Point member and have been for more than 40 years. But a move from Wells Fargo to On Point is a move from a bank to a credit union, and we should be looking into the ramifications of that type of move. The broader comment in terms of where we should be putting the money, what I would suggest so that it doesn't fall on your lap completely, I would suggest forming a committee of no more than 3 to 5 people who can look at all the issues very closely, people who have a great deal of experience, which would include you, of course, because I know that you do, but a committee to make that kind of decision keeps us out of having to come up in the same kind of hot water that the past treasurer did. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I think that's a great suggestion. And right now, going back to Mark's, we don't need to be in a big hurry for anything other than I do want to move those investments, talk to the current investment advisor and start moving those investments, start liquidating them somehow. But other than that, I would really like, I think, but my suggestion would be once our new board's elected, that we have 2 people on here that are finance people. One's running for treasurer, one's going to be a finance person. And I think the 3 of us might be able to work together and then present something to the board at that point.
Yeah. And that'd make sense. And again, I would do that before you, in fact, do start moving those investments.
And I would say, for the investments, I definitely agree, have the three of, Debbie, Deb, and Adnan and Valerie work
Mhm.
together on that decision. I would like to move from Wells Fargo sooner rather than later, just because we've had so much
It's
difficulty.
been a nightmare.
They just haven't done
Mhm.
anything for us at all, and it's taking multiple phone calls and visits just to
I
get.
mean, yeah, it's literally you go to the bank and they say you have to call this number, and then you call that number and they say you have to go to the bank, and it's just been
And they say they're going to do something,
awful.
they don't. And so we would like to move, at least at this point, to get the checking and savings account moved. As soon as
Yeah.
I would
Can we
say as
do it
soon as
now?
possible. Can we do that now and save the investment discussion for a later decision?
Mhm.
Is that possible?
Well, you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to move the investment funds, perhaps, Valerie, but the checking, the saving, you would be able to move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the investments are on a different, and it's with an advisor I work with at work. So, and he actually mentioned, he said, well, Karen made some investment choices that wouldn't have been mine. And I didn't realize till I saw it.
So can I move that we transfer our savings and checking account from Wells Fargo to OnPoint? Yes, please.
Second that motion.
Yes, please.
I don't know if it needs a motion, but I don't think it needs a vote, but I'm fine voting on, I'll vote on anything.
Okay, all in favor, move our savings, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great. All right, well, go ahead and start that process, then we will let them know. Cool. Okay, I had also sent everybody a proposed budget for 2024. And what I based it on, I looked at our profit and loss statements from November 1st, 2022 through November 1st of 2023. I figured that would encapsulate everything with events, and had to do a little bit of finagling. Thank you, Daniel, for getting me your stuff for summer solstice, because that was going to be a totally different budget from when it was at the zoo.
That budget's dartboard stuff.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I want to emphasize to everybody, this is just a starting point. It is not set in stone. If your race can make more money or cost less, or however you want to finagle it, this is just because every guidelines. Guidelines.
I really threw darts on all that stuff. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good dart thrower, but I feel.
Yeah. And the main thing is trying to make sure that we have the income from Turkey Trot, kind of guessing at that, and also income from enough of the other events to cover what our expenses were. And I looked at all the expenses that we had, those one-time ones that Valerie mentioned, like the copywriting and the website that we're no longer going to have. But then I also added in some expenses like the awards banquet, which we haven't had in a couple of years. And that does cost money because it's not primarily for the awards themselves and for the food. Those are the most expensive costs for that. So adding those things in, changing out the half marathon and 10K series for the President's Challenge. And so those were all the different subjects or items that I added and kind of adjusted just to see where we started from. It's very flexible. If we make more money, we can give out more in community funds. We can give a member giveaway, which I didn't include this coming year. But this is just the starting point to kind of give everybody an idea. And this is what I would hope to present at the annual meeting in January to the membership, to say this is our starting point for next year. And this is
Tracy, at what point does each individual race director give you the budget for that particular race?
Well, they were supposed to have given me a budget prior to this meeting. And so the ones that I received, I incorporated in there. And the ones I didn't,
Okay.
I just used the numbers from the previous year and kind of fudged a little bit based on
Okay.
what I thought we could do.
So as you say that, it would be helpful for me to know which ones of these numbers are race director budgets and which ones of these numbers you've taken a shot at. From a planning standpoint, that I think would give us better information.
You mean which race directors actually got me a budget?
Yes.
Okay, we got one from
Daniel for Duel
Daniel
and
for
Solstice.
Duel and Summer
Yeah.
Sol and
Yeah.
David Solstice Run.
Yeah.
We got Hagg Mud.
We got Hagg Mud,
Champoeg and Best Dam.
Champoeg and Best Dam Run.
And so what I would do is I would put that notation in the actual budget, because it leads one to believe that there's probably a slightly higher degree of confidence in those numbers, because you don't have to fake it.
Well, what I did though is I looked at the numbers for the races from the previous year, so I had all
yeah.
the expenses there.
Yeah.
And especially for like garlic, we had some expenses that I knew we weren't going to have for garlic for next year for like catering. So that's why
And
the
mailing awards.
and mailing of the awards and stuff. So there was a lot of things for that one that I thought I think we can make more money on garlic because we're not going to have these other expenses.
Okay. Another piece of reporting information that I've seen virtually everywhere I've been is to have each event be somewhat self-contained. So have, for example, Ralph's Run, put the expenses of Ralph's Run next to the income of Ralph's Run, so that we can see right there in one shot what we expect each event to contribute to profit.
Well, and that's why I had that second column next to it that said the expected revenue.
But then and that's helpful.
Yeah.
What I would think is helpful is to have the three columns together.
Okay. So just rearrange it, shift it
Thanks.
up.
Format.
Okay. Will
Good,
do.
thank you.
Okay. I don't think I need board approval for the budget, but I would if we need to, I would welcome a motion to approve the proposed budget for 2024.
I just had one question on the professional fees. Like, if we're gonna, you have 14,000 for the year, and Amanda is 1,000 herself. So were you including that in just a little bit?
Amanda is 12,000 of the 14.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I knew she was a big bulk of that.
Yeah, that was one where we were over budget by a couple thousand. I was like looking at every single item, saying, what can we cut that we won't have again, and stuff.
Right.
So.
And can you remind us what Amanda is?
Amanda is our graphic design artist who puts out the e-newsletter for us.
And we expect this to be continuing?
Yes.
I would suggest that we have a fee for graphic design for $12,000 a year, and another for miscellaneous professional fees for $2,000. Again, more information.
That's fine. Yep. Okay.
That's Alan, just to mention, that's this is a project I haven't got to, and it might be something we'll do into next year, but I want to we really need to break out these expenses, because like professional fees for races is not doing it. We need to have like porta potties, timing.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you, Valerie.
Yeah, because when new race directors step in, they need to see those items broken out.
Yep.
Sure.
It's a good planning tool that way.
Okay. Awesome. Let's see. I think everybody's on mute though at this point. Okay.
So would you want a motion, or
could I have a motion to accept the proposed budget for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Yeah, second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion passes.
Right.
Okay. Cupless discussion. This is a follow-up to last month's. And what we did after the discussion from last month, Julie and I researched compostable cups in more depth in specific Oregon. And as Mark said, there are no compostable cups. And actually people say they sell compostable cups, but they're really not. And they're actually more harmful than regular paper cups because they have a chemical in them. They're more plastics. And so they become microplastics when they do biodegrade, and they also put off more methane than the CO2 and other degradable stuff. So they're actually worse. So replacing our silicone reusable cups with reusable cups with compost is not an option. So what we did is I sent that statement to you that we basically just want to, we will continue to be cupless for Hagg mud because it works very well for trail events, but for road races, we just want to be eco-friendly. And so we would actually encourage people to bring their own water vessel, but we will be providing cups at the aid stations. And we would encourage other things like carpooling at our two events and things like that. So we'll try to be eco-friendly as much as we can, but we will no longer refer to ourselves as cupless because we will have cups. And they will not be once we use up the silicone cups, which we'll continue to give away and encourage people to use, but we will use the regular paper cups at the aid stations once the silicone cups are all used up and given away. And we'll actually buy them and we have a whole bunch of paper cups anyway we can continue to use for now. So did anybody want to tweak that eco-friendly statement? We were going to put that out on the Facebook page and on the website to kind of let people know, and on all of the run sign up and website pages for our events, remove the statement that says we're cupless and kind of put more the eco-friendly statement on there.
Reviewed, and I have no other questions.
Okay.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mhm.
All right, awesome. Thank you all. And I really appreciated all your feedback for last month because that really helped us in the research and everything. So thank you. Okay, elections update. It's coming. We are preparing an e-newsletter. Our next e-newsletter is going out this Friday. It's a race director focused one. I also wanted to mention that Hal had said he wanted to step down as equipment manager. He's still going to be race director for Garlic, but he doesn't want to be equipment manager anymore. And I reached out to Jeff Weirman, and he has agreed to take on the role of equipment manager. But we are also going to, in this e-newsletter, see if anybody else wants to volunteer so he can kind of have a co-manager with that. So it's not all on him, but he has agreed to take that on. So we met with him this weekend and gave him met with him on Monday and gave him keys to the garage and showed him everything and that type of thing. So he'll be the one.
Throwing name out there just because I'm stupid and crazy and eager to volunteer other people.
Mm-hmm.
You might give Joe Lopez a call. That might be up his alley.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I don't know, but he looks like he's looking for something to do, and I feel like that would be a good fit for him. And since he's got Jeff there, they both live in the same neighborhood. He might be a good person to say, hey, kind of, I call it the Ralph Brown approach. Get him to do something, and then you can reel him in a little bit.
Reel him in a little bit, yeah. Don't let everybody know I'm doing that. So
it's very effective for me, and I think it probably worked for Alan and Margie as well.
Back to the elections, Carissa says that she's going to work on getting the elections webpage updated possibly before Thanksgiving. 1 to 2 weeks. That's what we'll see. What we want to do is the Monday after Thanksgiving, we want to send out a special e-newsletter election edition that tells people and all the candidates again and what the process is going to be. So letting them know that we're going to open up the form. If they've renewed their membership or if they're current members, they will receive an email from Run Sign Up letting them know to go to with a link to the form to vote and what the dates are and everything. So we want to refer them to that website. So that's kind of the timing that we have in mind for if the e-newsletter goes out on Monday after Thanksgiving, the election page on the website just needs to be up by then. So that's the timing. Okay. And everybody should have already gotten their email from Run Sign Up, just reminding them to renew their membership or check their membership. So that's already gone out. And okay. And I think that was it for the election, but it's going smoothly so far. And okay. Generic awards for ORRC events. Mark and Bonnie We were gonna be working on that to try to get that ready for Ralph's run. We have got the Caboose Award already ordered, so that's set to go. We were talking about like my first race, my first 5K, or the bibs that you were gonna do special. Did you have an update on that, Bonnie? Were you gonna work on that?
Yeah, Valerie's husband, I had sent some drafts that I had put together and sent them to Valerie's husband, Ken, and he just got some, he played around with them and he just sent them back to us this morning. So, I don't know if Mark had a chance to look at him yet tonight or not, but basically it's just one bib design. The only difference is that the distance is, there'll be 4 different bibs, one for 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon. And then there's blanks where people can write on their name, the date, and the race that they're participating in. And then the idea is that they could pick one up before they start, wear it, and people can encourage them along the course.
Like it. All right. Bib board. Customized bib boards. What was that? That was the request.
Yep.
Chris, you want to take that one?
Sure. So I'll just share my screen, I guess. Can you guys see that? So I don't know if you've heard of bib boards. They are kind of replacements or alternatives to safety pins. You don't put holes in your shirts and you don't use magnets. They're kind of like these oval things that kind of function like snaps. And individually, a set would retail for about $15. But I found out that we can order them in bulk and get a huge discount. So I was thinking this is a possibility for a club because we could get 500, for example. Then a piece that would only cost us $2. We could even sell them for $5, which would still be like 2/3 off retail. I asked for a mock-up. They could look like this.
Oh.
And I kind of stole the idea from the RRCA because they are selling them, but they're selling them for $12.
Yeah.
$5 is a good price. I have bib boards. Sorry, I'm sorry. $5, it's a good
Anyway,
price.
So just floating that idea out, rather than just giving them away, I thought if we sold them for $5, it's kind of a win-win because people would get them for super cheap relative to what they could. We'd make a couple bucks. And maybe even race participants who aren't even members might want them. So that's what I've got. Any questions?
Would you need 4 of them though? Like would we be selling 1 snap or 4 snaps for that price?
It's a set. The set would be, yeah, the $5 or the.
Okay, that's a really good deal.
But
And great.
Yeah, I like the idea of it and stuff, but just remember that if we do something like this means we have to have somebody dedicated at each race to sell them, to be there, take the money or do set up some sort of online ordering system that they can get them from the club.
That's true.
I like the idea if we have the money, which I just had a balanced budget with no member giveaway. I like the idea of purchasing like a bunch to do a member giveaway because they're small, they'd be easy to mail to everybody, and it'd be something unique and different.
I love them.
I like the idea for a giveaway, and I would say get them sponsored, and I would pledge to be a sponsor for that. If you wanted to get a few more people to pay for them, I would certainly step in with no without getting anything in return.
If we were going to do it for a member giveaway, we would need to purchase. I think when we sent the magnets, I think there were 541 to mail, separate addresses to mail to. Yeah.
What if it's like a family? Wouldn't you want to send them?
Yeah, family
Right.
memberships, we probably want to send a set of 2 instead of just 1.
Yeah. So you're
So-
talking 700, 800. maybe.
Well, and if you order 1,000, it's $1,700, and it's and then you have a bunch to give every time we get new members.
But it's great advertising for the club.
Yeah. And it'd be eco-friendly because we wouldn't be throwing away a bunch of safety pins.
It'd be pinless.
Pinless, yeah, not cupless, we'd be pinless. Okay.
Don't we all have a container full of safety pins?
Of course,
That's
walk
what-
back in, there you go. Got a whole bin of safety pins in the garage too. It's just, so yeah, I would say let's start maybe by ordering 1,000 and thinking of them as a member giveaway at some point for next year.
Also, I would say go ahead and since our budget for 2000, our budget for 2023 is kind of weird anyway because of 2 different regimes. Buy them now.
Yeah, don't wreck the next year budget.
It hits next year's budget.
Depending on what you mail them, we're only paying for postage next year. Carissa, would you like to take that on and order 1,000?
I guess you could, sure.
If you you could call me and I could give you my debit card information, or I could pay for it, whatever you want to work out.
All right, I'll connect with you, Valerie, and
Okay.
figure it out.
Thank you, Carissa. Okay, home stretch. Proposed walking clinic. Carmen Jakinski, I don't know if many of you met her at Duel. She is a race walker and she coaches race walkers. She also has her own footwear company and stuff. But she would like to offer a 1-hour race walking or power walking clinic to our members to promote walking at events. She would do it for free, but then she'd want to sell reshod shoes at the clinic, have them available for purchase at the clinic. She's available any Saturday in December and January, except January 20th. So I just said I would bring it to the board and see if we were interested in doing something like that. It's not on our calendar, but we could definitely let our members know in an e-newsletter that we're offering it if we want to schedule something like that. What do you all think?
Absolutely do it. Carmen's the best. She's dedicated to the club. She's got the connection. She's somebody we want to work with, and we want to build.
And it's an equity thing with us walker people that the club cares.
Feel like my wife was before she was my wife, she was the VP of walking for this club, and she struggled with the fact that we kind of snubbed our nose at these offers back in the day. So I'm all for it, and if Carmen's leading it, I'm even more for it.
Does anybody want to take on coordinating this with Carmen? Otherwise, I can reach out to her and just see when
Otherwise,
she can, because we don't know when or where or anything.
I can figure something out with her. I'll reach out.
All right, we will let her know, and I'll respond to her and copy you, Daniel, so you know.
Very well. We'll see if we can find her a venue.
Yeah.
So.
We have a couple of events, so schedule one of those.
Yeah, just schedule it on the events, that's all. And the holidays. Okay, I already talked about the equipment manager, so we're already there. We already talked about the sound system, so don't worry about that. Basically, for the next board meeting, we'll just have a turkey trot recap. Hopefully, it's going to go really well. We won't have weather issues, and we'll go over upcoming events and the election results, because our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, December 12th, which is the Tuesday after the election. The question that we would also have at the next meeting is the RRCA convention is in Costa Mesa, California in early May. And would we want to send 1 or 2 board members to that? And so think about that for next month.
I would like to spend a couple of minutes talking about that if we could.
Yeah, sure.
Tracy, Julia, have you guys ever been?
Oh, yeah. We went one year when we were first VP of races, I think. Florida, Orlando.
Okay, well, because I was going to suggest sending the 2 of you. Mark, since you guys are both going to be running for re-election, I think it would be either great or to have our new treasurer. But I do believe that I've gone a dozen times. I've been a keynote speaker there. So, and so I wouldn't want to go. I couldn't go anyway. Margie probably feels the same way. She's been a dozen times. I think she was even there the year I was at Tahoe, the year I was a keynote speaker. So, so I think, but I would love to see the two of you represent us. Basically, you guys took on a job at a time when nobody wanted to, and I feel it's not only a reward, but you guys are really good at bringing stuff back and sharing the good stuff with us, so much the way that Alan and I did the race director symposium that Les used to send us to. They were just invaluable to our club by sending us and have us dispel the stuff. I would love to see you guys do that. That's my personal opinion. I don't know how the others feel, but that's what I would like to see happen if it's up to us.
That was my same comment, and I think it'll be great because you can see what, I mean, things have changed. I mean, you've been involved in the club all along, but you'll really get the new ideas that are out there. And we, like Daniel said, we know you'll bring them back. And I think that's the least we could do for all you've put into making this club keep going.
Definitely, definitely.
I know, sorry. I know George Remmett really well, the president. I run with him once in a while. He comes to our club all the time.
Cool. Bonnie?
Yeah, I like the idea of sending both Julia and Tracy as well, but I kind of think it might be good to send a new board member after the election as part of our succession planning so that they have a chance to kind of feel immersed into it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking and possibly Adnan, because he was also going to be a finance person. So I was thinking those two, honestly, instead of Julie and me. But we can talk more about that at the December meeting. And for those of you who are running and we'd be interested in possibly going, you know, definitely. I agree with you, Bonnie. I think as a succession plan, I would like some new people to get some experience meeting the people there and seeing how we are related to RRCA and things like that, since I do know that. I do appreciate all of your comments and your support, but I don't need to go if we can encourage some new people to go and get a good experience there as well. So if you'd like to go, let us know.
One of the things, just to put a little dot on the end of that, is it might be helpful for someone who has gone before and knows RCA to be then kind of underneath someone's wing, sending a new person. So just as a comment. So if you or Tracy, you or Julia would be willing to do that, and you know, or one of our current board members wanting to, you know, do that. So.
And I was thinking along those lines, either Tracy or Julia, one of them, and one of the new members. And the two of you, whichever one of you goes, would also be great schmoozing with the RRCA leadership. And that really is important. That's hugely important.
Cool. Okay. All right. We will think about that. All right. So reminding you, next meeting, Tuesday, December 12th. And Karen, I will touch base with you about the election, and I'm going to be sending out the invitation to people. So we need to coordinate turning on the form the same time the invitation is going out to vote.
Okay. Sounds good.
Awesome. Anybody have any other questions before we adjourn? All right. It's great seeing all of you again. Thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you all of you who met last week for the bylaws. We had great progress, and I think we did a great job on them. And
thank you, Tracy. This is a great meeting.
It is shorter. Woo, woo.
Productive. Productive.
Bye.
Bye.
See a lot of you on Sunday. Bye.
Bye.